Hello and welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. My guest on the show today is Garima Surana. She is a podcaster herself and runs a fantastic show called Popcast with Garima. I think when I really got to know about her work, I was drawn to the manner in which she has conversations because I felt it was really free flowing, but also the fact of there was humor, yet a lot of information that I could grab from her conversations. And I feel that there just should be more and more of these people who are who are willing to have these conversations where they don't really think about what would work in the traditional media among the other sorts of things. So that was fascinating. We in this particular conversation talked a lot about the manner in which conversations are being held, which I think is really important. Even though Garima and I disagreed in the manner in which podcasting has a future in the country and worldwide, even I still felt it was an interesting conversation. I understand that Garima could only give me an hour, so we could only scratch the surface of the manner of the things I really wanted to touch base on. But I still feel that we did cover quite a bit, and I have requested Garima to come on in the future where I can host her again and maybe delve deeper into the things we were talking about, because I think she's doing some tremendous work with trying to actually inform people of why holding stereotypes may not be the best in society, among other things. So I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with her, and I hope you guys do as well. So without further ado, here's the conversation. Hey Garma, welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And like I just said, so sorry for all the back and forth, but I think I compensate and I make up to all the lost time.
Right. No, that's no worries. So just let the listeners and the viewers know a little bit about yourself and the work you do.
Sure. So my name is Garima Surana. I host an award-winning podcast called Popcast with Garima, which is a pop culture podcast where we try to break the stereotype, as we call it, for all stereotypes, which is mostly for all women, of course. And we'll, take a deeper dive into why we sort of talk about breaking these stereotypes, and we talk the taboo in the podcast. I think that was one of the points that you shared with me, Ishan. So that is that. And profession, I mean, this is also my profession. I'm a full-time podcaster, but otherwise, I've co-founded this company which is called Podcash, which is an audio monetization tool. So any potential podcasters listening to this episode, hit me up. We can definitely work together. I can help you monetize your podcast and make it a sustainable business rather than just a passion hobby or a side, gig that you're doing. And podcast is now acquired by Sochcast, which is a full stack audio suite. So you can create, listen, host, monetize, and redistribute your podcast. So it's a full stack suite that we are building with Sochcast. Yeah.
Listen, that's really interesting because that was something I wanted to get into. Maybe we will do during a conversation here today. So you talked a little bit about obviously starting off a podcast and even like having this company set up where you sort of want to promote podcasting in India. Like, what do you think podcasting is though? Because so I've had several podcasters on my platform and I've asked them this particular question because often people have different takes on how they do their podcast, but also what the conception of a podcast is really. So
Right.
do you think about this?
So I'll give you two answers. First is like an answer which is hard to art. For me, podcasting is a way of therapy where I can sort of vent out all my emotions, all my thoughts, where I can literally voice, and nothing else matters. So for me, it's a medium of therapy where mic is literally my best friend, and not just now. I've been amused, and Mike has been like my best friend from sixth grade. That's when I first, that was my first time ever speaking and holding a mic in my hand, and I fell in love with it. The thrill of listening to my own voice echo from a distance sort of really gives me, it's a big thrill for me. But otherwise, I think podcasting is an imported term with absolutely no meaning. If I have to, give you something about the real meaning of podcasting, it's an imported term which Apple sort of invented because it was related to their iPod, and that's when podcasting sort of happened. what we want to do with Sochcast, and I'm shamelessly promoting my platform here, but what we want to do is change the entire narrative because, like I said, podcast is an imported term with no meaning. With Sochcast, I really want to talk and value your soch, your idea, your thought. So we really want to sort of, transform the entire Indian audio landscape by promoting your soch
Hmm.
via Sochcast, right? So that's like my 2 cents. But I think it's, we're still scratching the surface. It was only last year when it was a breakthrough year for podcasts. We've been sitting on this golden egg for like the entire decade, and it was only last year, virtue of pandemic, when we saw like a massive rise in people consuming audio content. Now with apps like Clubhouse and Clubhouse clones, um, that have come up. So if you see every platform, right from LinkedIn to Reddit to Facebook to Instagram, all of these big players are migrating to audio, and even Twitter,
Yep.
right,
Yep.
with Spaces. So I think we're on the cusp of change. All of, audio is going to be like a big, big, big differentiator in our lives now.
Yeah. See, there's so many things to unpick there. But just if I have to start off, so you mentioned this aspect of it being a very intimate connection with your
Yeah,
mic as such, and yeah. So just in that particular sense that of how, for example, obviously there are still limitations as to you still need a podcast hosting server and those sorts of things, but just that particular thing that if you sort of have a particular voice and if you have an RSS feed as such, then you can sort of voice your opinion about whatever you may want to voice it about.
yeah,
And this is something I find like revolutionary in that sense, because almost how I think about podcasting is that in the West, most intellectuals and most personalities in that sense, most celebrities are starting to have a podcast. And the reason I feel about that is because I find it superior to most other social media platforms. You sort of hinted at that, but it's sort of because um, the manner in which I look at text based conversations and those sorts of things is that you don't really understand where the other person's coming from, which I think a podcast sort of gives you that sort of longevity and that space to explore ideas, which is why I fell in love with podcasting when I started to hear Joe Rogan and those sorts of people. So,
yeah. No,
yeah,
I completely, agree on that bit. But I think, why people are now suddenly moving to podcasting, and this really, everybody's raving around the format. I think when blogs came, we said that TV is gonna, like
right.
sort of
Yeah.
not be existing anymore, and blogs will take over, and then now OTTs will take over. I think with every new platform that comes, there's a certain bubble, there's a fad around it. There's of course FOMO, right? So more
Mhm.
and more people want to get on the platform, want to experience what it's about. So which is why if you see, I think if I'm not wrong, there are around 24,000 podcasts in
Yeah.
India, right? Not sure how many of them are active. And there's a huge concept which is called pod fading, which means that, you might start a podcast out of your interest or your curiosity, or, you wanting to get your hands dirty on another platform. But pod fading essentially means that you put out 7 episodes and then you sort of vanish, right? So my thing is that a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon of, getting onto podcasts, maybe out of FOMO, or because they really want to cascade and amplify their voice, right? But are we here to sustain is the question. Is voice, our podcast as a platform, here for a long haul, or we're just in a bubble right now that's created?
Right. Yeah, I think the fact that it's so easy for people to put podcasts out there is probably one of the reasons why people sort of start at it in the sense that they jump into the market. But I genuinely feel that it is there to be there in the long term, because how I look at podcasting, and maybe I am different in that sense because it's still growing in India as such. I use it whenever I'm working out. I'm using it wherever I'm doing some menial task around the house. But so, what do you make of that though? Because like I feel audio, and you sort of hinted about it in the initial onset of it. I feel it's a very intimate connection, because often what happens when you're consuming video or YouTube or something of that sort, you're very much concentrated on that particular thing. So you have to give your whole attention to that. Whereas several intellectuals have talked about this, that now people can almost do courses on their commutes. If they're commuting to work, they can. And some of the podcasts that are out there, they're really deep and high level content which you often don't get otherwise on the internet. So like, what are your thoughts on the audio medium as such as compared
I
to other
think
mediums?
the inherent nature of audio is that it's meant for passive consumption. The fact that it can trigger the theater in your mind and it can sort of spark that creativity, right? There's a reason why we used to call television an idiot box, because everything was served to you in front of your eyes, right? There was no scope of imagination. Whatever you were sort of spoon fed in terms of, whatever was being displayed, you sort of took it in and you consumed it. And when I say it triggers the theater in your mind, it means that when I listen to, even if, and not just saying it for a fiction or an audio drama podcast, right? I also mean it for conversations like how
Yeah.
you and me
Yeah.
are having, right? This whole fact that whatever I'm listening to first, the beauty is that I can consume it passively, which means I can do, I can multitask, I can be indulged in 10 other things. Like you said, you commute, and while you commute you listen to podcasts. So I might be doing my household chores, I might be just literally even doing my work, right? I mostly consume podcasts while I'm in the midst of writing emails.
Hmm.
So that's when I sort of listen to podcasts. But the whole point where you get such an intimate experience where you feel like the person is talking to you, and when you hear that voice, I mean, how close can you get? And that's what I tell even brand custodians, right, who are interested in advertising on podcasts. How close can your product get? Imagine it sliding through somebody's ears, you
Yeah.
know. So that intimacy, that first-hand connection, as somebody who comes from a radio background, we've always been taught that treat your microphone as your best friend. So now when you address to your audience, just speak to them like I'm talking to my best friend. So how candid will you get, right? There's always a filter, literally and metaphorically, on video platforms. There's always a filter that you sort of present, because for whatsoever reason. Um, but with audio, there are absolutely no filters other than this pop filter that I have here. But that's the whole beauty. It's such an intimate experience. You get to, and right now I think we're still exploring audio as a format. The time
Oh
will
yeah.
come when we
Yeah.
will start exploiting it, which means that right now a lot of people just consider podcast to be self help content, right? अच्छा, या तो कोई इन्वेस्टर आएगा या कोई इंटरव्यू होगा या स्टार्टअप के बारे में आपका पॉडकास्ट होगा, या आप लोगों को मोटिवेशन दे रहे हो. Like that's what the broad idea that people have when you tell them I have a podcast. When you go and when you dive in as niche as a topic, where your podcast is tomorrow, let's say just about sneakers, or just about talking about the northeast of India,
Mhm.
or talking about as niche as you can get, right? Let's say only about dissecting songs. That's when the real revolution will happen, because right now everybody's seeing it from a very macro perspective. And even for audience, I think podcasters from their side really need to exploit the platform and come up with new ways of giving out content,
Yeah.
right? Not just limited to either an interview, or limited, even if it's an interview, how well structured is your podcast? What value? I always believe in that. And this is my personal thing that I always, if even if you listen to podcast, it's edited in a certain way wherein there's a graph, right?
Mhm.
So when you do storytelling for any format, I think that's very important. Yeah.
See, I don't know. I sort of disagree with one particular thing, which is that I totally understand. That was my primary question as such. That what do you think a podcast is? So as you said, maybe the manner in which you go about conversations, because even though you have an interview-based style, you still have an idea as to where you want to go ahead with the conversation, which is fair enough. That's a
Yeah.
great thing to have. But I still feel that there are other ways of going about conversations. For example, like the manner in which I like it is, so the primary reason why I started off podcasting was I got fed up with the traditional media, because I felt that it was all narrative based and almost, and I mentioned this so many times on my podcast that my listeners are probably bored, is the fact that you almost have 8-minute clips, and then you almost have to have this politician speak for 8 minutes only, where he has to see something coming out from a TV where there are particular sentences mentioned in such a way because it that's the only way people can consume content, let's say. And that's where I sort of got drawn to people like I mean, I keep mentioning Joe Rogan, but he's just an example. Sam Harris and other sorts of people who were willing to have conversations which probably the traditional media wouldn't want to go down that path. That was my particular thing, and it doesn't matter how long the conversation takes. So that's another thing. Maybe
Can I just interject here? I
go
agree.
on.
It does not matter how long your conversation is, but your audience, is your market evolved enough to listen to 3 hours of
Hmm.
conversation? When we talk about Joe Rogan, um, his was a market that was always open to talk. Talk FM radio as a format, right? We never had Talk FM radio in India. It was all about music. Even when the RJ would speak, people would have the tendency of switching to another channel. So, you know, I don't, my problem is not when people go on talking for 3 hours, it's fine.
Hmm.
As long as your content is interesting, people find value in it. But tum content dikha kisko rahe ho? Is your
Hmm.
market or is your audience evolved
Yeah.
to listen for 3 hour long, right? When we have competitive platforms wherein the content is for 15 seconds
Yeah.
and the attention span is as less as 15 seconds, on platforms like Instagram, YouTube has YouTube Shorts, right? So when you have other platforms which have such a small amount of content window frame, and in that parameter, I don't think, at least at today, I don't think our audience is that evolved to listen to 3 hour long podcasts.
See, but maybe Garima, I don't want to harp on to this point, maybe because there are so
Yeah,
many other things to get onto. But I
definitely.
feel, but I feel the fact is, and so there's this great podcaster in India called Amit Varma. He does the seen and
Yeah,
the unseen. So I
yeah.
really enjoy his show, and something he
Yes.
talks about. And I would like to ask you this particular question because you sort of have a radio background in that sense. So he says that with radio and all the other commercial sorts of media that we have, they sort of have to almost always cater to the lowest common denominator. So if you are at the radio, you can only sort of, even if there is something you are thinking about, you can only project it as such that maybe the person who is listening in, you sort of have to cater to the person who probably would take time to understand that particular thing that you're talking about or whatsoever. Which I think podcast, as you were talking about, making it niche, making it whatever, making it your particular style. So he talks about this concept of 1,000 true fans. So it doesn't as much matter about, let's say, if you got an episode with 250,000 downloads or listens or what have you, but if you have those 1,000 fans coming in every single week, um, then maybe that's a stronger community to hold. I don't know, I'm rambling, I don't know if you
No, no, I get. See, of course, podcast is all about having a small, highly engaged, targeted group, and if you only have 1,000 fans, great.
Mhm.
It's not a massy medium right now, wherein you expect a million people listening to your podcast, right? That's not the trend. But having said that, something I can tell you from my experience, Amit Varma has these 3 hour long podcasts. Great. I mean, if his content is very immersive and engaging, good for him, right? Something that I noticed personally, and this is what every podcaster will sort of tell you what works for them, what doesn't work for them. I'll give you data led stuff that I saw with my podcast. So I was somebody who was making around 30 to 40 minutes, like that was my cap size. Okay. And most of my episodes are around like in the same bracket, 30 to 40 minutes, right? Season two onwards, I made a very small switch, which is I took out I started making these pop shots, which was an IP under my podcast, which are small, snackable, 10 minutes, bite-sized content, which we also call as microcasts, which is
Mhm.
any podcast that's under 10 minutes is a microcast, right? Now, what I observed when I went back to my dashboard and my analytics, and what I saw was that people are, the consumption rate and the average listen time of a podcast that's only 10 minutes, people have sort of heard it first way more than my main episode. Second, the smaller episode acted as a teaser or a trailer to the main
Hmm.
episode because I would sort of relate and bring back people. So there was a call to action there that hey, go and listen to the main episode if you enjoy listening this bit. And what I sort of learned from that is that if I can encapsulate an hour long of content into those 10 minutes for somebody who might just have a very small, attention time, or who might not be willing to go through that 1 hour, 40 minutes of content, right? So if I can encapsulate that in 10 minutes, if I can pick out certain pieces of what my speaker has spoken about, or even if it's just one question that I sort of address to, and then I tell my, listener that, hey, if you enjoyed listening to this bit, why don't you go check out the main episode with blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of, like, what I saw was there was a spike in terms of the listeners that I had who were coming to listen to those pop shots specifically. So I think this was a learning which was personally for my podcast, that smaller content pieces worked in a way. Having said that, I enjoy making long form content. So I anyway, sort of stick to making my main episode of 30-40 minutes, which is like all information, everything, consolidated into one episode. But I will also go on experimenting, making those smaller microcasts wherein I want to really see the trend, because I want to understand and study my audience, right? And not as a generic overview of what's performing well.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And yeah, so something I sort of hinted at in terms of why I started this podcast, and I think a lot about this aspect of free speech in society, and I feel that free speech has to be paramount in the sense that however much you may disagree with a particular idea, you still have to entertain that in society. And I feel that podcasting in some sense allows me to do that, engage with people who I possibly disagree with, but still allow them the space to voice their opinions. Do you think about that? Like, was that one of the was that something that you sort of, because you also talk about this aspect of breaking stereotypes and informing, I don't know if the right word is informing, but also sort of talking about these issues which sort of the traditional media often leaves behind. So is free speech something that you think about, and was that something that formed your thought in starting off a podcast or a sochcast?
Definitely. I think, right now there is, and I'm very glad, like, there is no censorship to the audio content at this point in time, at
Yeah,
least,
at least.
until our, yeah. uh, but the fact that there is no censorship, and today you and me can, talk about any topic under the sun, political, apolitical, and have our free speech, I mean, literally speak about anything with, a platform that gives me the opportunity to voice my thoughts as a priority, and talk about anything, not worrying about how you look, or how you sort of, the equipment that you have, or any other details that you might need in terms of making a great video production happen, or any other content form for that matter. So
Mhm.
definitely free speech, the fact that there's no censorship, I mean, 100%. And about the stereotypes, yes, I think somebody asked me the other day on another podcast interview, is that why did I go ahead in terms of what I talk and choose a platform like podcast when I could have easily done it on an Instagram or a YouTube?
Mhm.
I think the very simple answer to that is I have to first, even very strategic point of view, is that I understand the video market. First, it's very 2020. It's very fast paced, for me. And second, it's a very, very saturated space. If I was a person who can change 20 dresses in 15 seconds, I would have loved to do it. But do I enjoy changing 15 dresses in 20 seconds? I don't. Right? Do is that something that is my expertise, or my thought of interest, or something that gives me joy? No, it doesn't. So for me, the fact that I can take those, not 15 seconds, but an hour to speak to
Mhm.
my guest, to figure out and to totally unlearn, these deep rooted conditioning that especially women in our country, myself included, over this 1 year with, with my podcasting journey, I have unlearned so many things, more than what my school, college, or any other university could have ever taught me. These real life lessons that I have learned, and literally, that now I feel so glad I can amplify through my podcast, where so many men, come up and say that they have learned so much, even though the podcast is designed to empower women.
Mhm.
But when men come back and say that, hey, I heard your podcast about prioritizing female pleasure, and now I understand why it's so important. And thank you for giving me that perspective. I think my job there is done.
Yeah. So just taking on to, let's say, the importance of conversation before we, let's say, dabble into the other topics as
Yeah.
such. Um, like, so Sam has this particular quote where he says that the only way societies can make progress is through honest conversation. And I find that so powerful because so another thing I think a lot about when it comes to free speech is that often people will be all for free speech until they hear something that they disagree with, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And so that's when this aspect of cancel culture comes in. And this is something I've been speaking about a lot, in that sense that people wouldn't take the time to sort of understand the rubrics of whatever, let's say, so ideology isn't a particular word that I particularly like, but sort of the people I interact with, they sort of have an ideological possession, which is something I sort of guard against. But the point I'm trying to make is that they sort of move into these tribes as to they start associating themselves with these with these titles. And that's something I don't particularly agree with, as because you don't sort of understand the rubrics of the system that you're talking about. So when I interact with these people, just for an example, if I talk to communists, if I talk to, let's say, feminists, even, because with feminism I feel that there are so many schools of feminism,
Yeah.
and I feel that not many people get a, like, and those could be really different in when you're having conversations about equality and those sorts of things. So that's another thing I think about, because people often would then start, okay, just because Garima said so, I'm going to share that on my story and say that, oh, you go girl, and this, that, whatever. But then they wouldn't be able to understand that. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, what do you think?
No, just about feminism here or about the
I
whole.
mean, okay, so we could first touch base on this whole aspect of tribal culture, and then maybe you can give me what you think about feminism.
Um, I think, feminism started as a movement that was about having certain ideologies
Hmm.
and propagating women's rights. And today it has become more about aesthetics. And I'll
Yeah.
give you a reasoning why, right? I'll just take like 5 minutes here, but I'll possibly try to deconstruct this and explain it to you, right? So, and why am I saying that the whole ideology versus the aesthetic of 2021 feminism, right? So I think it was around Women's Day in March when there was an ad where a lot of these, very pretty looking, gracefully dressed, fairly glamorous women all came together, and um, and they were talking about women empowerment, right? Now, all of these women come from a place of privilege, and clearly they were not speaking their mind because it was a scripted ad.
Hmm.
Now, as the video progresses, you sort of realize that it's only because a particular brand wants to please its particular set of women around it, and that's why I'm talking about the aesthetic here, right? So, what are we celebrating? I mean, I asked myself this question back then when I was seeing the whole feministic um, ad, right? So now, if I can just talk to you about there are four waves of feminism broadly, if I may. So the first wave of feminism started around in the 15th century, where most of the women, spoke about the rejected idea of intersectionality. They spoke about how only white women were sort of privileged, and only that was taken into consideration. This was around in the 15th century when I think somewhere in France the whole movement started. The second wave emerged in 1960s, and then women started talking about their sexuality, the domestic violence that happened around them, rape, women's reproductive rights, and more in terms of how, um, you know, basically whatever was the discrimination that happened in the first wave, which was only for white women, this is what sort of changed in the second movement. Even after the World War II, there were two branches that came out of. First was liberal feminism, and second was radical feminism, right? Then moving on to third wave, which was after the World War III. Now that changed more onto women's work rights, race, their ability to work in a space which was mostly patriarchal. There was religion that we talked about. So that was more on the third. And the fourth, which is in the early 2000s, or around 2010, actually, when Me Too movement happened, when, if you remember, Emma Watson's campaign for he, the, she, it was for UN women, right? So most of these things then appeared. We started seeing a lot of marginalized women talking about how they sort of, are rejected in the entire feminist movement, right? And coming to 2021 now, the ideologies that were set by people like Gloria Steinem or like Rebecca Walks, right? All of these people, are those in accordance with the ideologies that were laid down by pioneers like these guys? Perhaps, yes, most of the time, yes, but there's still mansplaining, there's still, whataboutery that happens. A lot of men repulse when they even listen from a woman that she's a feminist. We still have trolls. So the whole equality bit here is still, it's not a level playing field, I would say. So there are so many things around feminism that one has to, like, really first figure out what was happening and what are we actually doing with it today. The fact that it started with real issues, and are we like even addressing those issues, or has it just become aesthetics for us?
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful point in that sense of people wanting to sound. I mean, I know
Woke
you.
or
Yeah,
cool?
there you go. There you go. That was
No,
the word. I was just a little cautious because you speak a
no,
lot about.
because it is a thing, right? Why do you think the word feminazi came into being placed? From the whole, it literally came out because people wanted to be woke enough to first know that they know feminism, and then they want to sort
Hmm.
of troll it and become feminazis,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't the whole feminazi propaganda the fact that you have to take over the patriarchy so that men can feel how women feel or something like that? Isn't that the whole conception of feminazi?
No, it's mostly calling out women for, um, from my understanding of feminazi, it's mostly men calling out women for
Being
for
too
saying that, hey, you have these equal rights, right? Like, what's wrong? And what about our rights? Like,
uh,
whenever you talk about domestic violence that women face, or have dealt with, men will always come around saying, hey, but we also get beaten. Now the point here is, it's only a handful of men who will ever, I'm not saying it does not happen, but the fact that the the level of where men would get into domestic violence vis-a-vis what women would get is very disproportional.
see, like, I mean, and that's again taking it to the. Okay, first of all, I would like to understand equality as well because you talked about this aspect that that's where, let's say, distinctions come in terms of equality because you sort of don't understand the different schools of feminism and sort of historically how it sort of played out. But I feel equality too, people don't understand when they talk about equality what they mean by equality. So I've made several videos on this and I've spoken a lot about this, that so there's a difference between equality and equity, which people sort of have to understand. And there's a difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome, and what that
Very,
sort of, yeah, and those are very important concepts to wrap your head around, because what often happens is that when I interact with, I mean, I'm throwing the word around loosely, feminists, let's say, they sort of don't understand the distinction. And so they would see a particular industry where they would see, let's say, underrepresentation of women, and they would just hint at that and say that, oh, that's clearly discrimination, and not look at the multivariate analysis where there are several different variables that come into play. It's
hmm,
not only discrimination. I'm not going to say that. So obviously discrimination's a big part, and that's something that we are still fighting against. But there's so many other things that people often don't take into consideration.
yes. uh, Last couple of days I've been learning a lot about how marginalized women, women who come from the marginalized section of the society, Savarna women, how women with, um, who have been from the oppressed minority side have now, now coming to the forefront and now speaking about their rights and equality for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think I'm, myself on that journey and process of learning a lot about, and I think for anybody, I'm 27 right now, and if I'm learning at this point in time about all of this, I think, everybody should probably invest some time in terms of, and probably go watch your videos for that. No, I'm going to do that too, because I think it's never too late. And all of these concepts that keep coming in every day as part of internet culture, but they all are there because at one point in time, these conversations were once ignited, and it's
Mhm.
not because of the woke movement. They had like legit meat to themselves, right? There's a reason why today all of these things are bouncing back, because we need to go back of where we went wrong in the history of how did patriarchy actually in the first place come into existence.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, you're making a lot of sense in that sense. Obviously, with these things, patriarchy, whatever these things are, there's so
And I
much
think
to
one
be.
really needs to understand from where did these things actually start happening, and
Hmm.
not necessarily you have to go back to history. Like, start small, look at things around you, look at your household. I think this one picture has been really getting glorified on the internet right now, which is a woman with an oxygen cylinder and still making rotis. And there's this one guy who shared the picture saying, mother's love is, I don't know really like the verbatim that he put in there, but mother's love is incomparable, she's never off duty. Now you see, how are we glorifying this woman who is literally with her oxygen cylinder, and with her, the oxygen mask on, is bellowing rotis, and we're glorifying it under the name of mother's love,
Hmm.
right? And it's insane to me. Like, look at things around yourself first, and I think that's where change will actually happen. That guy, because he's seen his mother every day in the kitchen 365 days 24/7, thinks this is her love, right? I think it's very, very problematic on what from generations we've been seeing in our house, right? Even today, like, you know because it was lockdown, of course, so my father could actually help my mother in terms of be it doing dishes or helping her out in the kitchen, but that was purely because of the love, right? And not because of a radical understanding that a woman's place is not always in the kitchen. All three of us, like all three daughters, we sat down and we tried explaining him, and his logic was, because I've seen it that way for generations.
Hmm.
There's always a change. I think a conversation is an enabler. Have a dialogue with your peers, your family members. A lot of times, forget about our parents, dude. A lot of times we even have these misogynistic friends around us who we feel ashamed to call out, because for simple reasons that they might be acquaintances or friends or whatever. Like, we don't want to hurt them. But calling out problematic behavior is very, very important. If not, I'm not saying cancel them, but I'm saying calling out and making somebody cognizant of that. Hey, this is, I think, where you're probably um, you're not going maybe into the right direction, or this is where you need to sort of learn something, or this is, hey, like, you're fucking up here, but this is how you could have dealt.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of these things are very, very important of how we change things around ourselves.
No, I think that's really important. The fact that you take the time to have a dialogue with your father in that sense, and sort of um, depict your side of the argument to him. Because what I often see happening, and we've sort of touched about it here, is that, so for example, there's a 60-year-old uncle and he's probably supporting BJP. So he'd not talk to, let's say, the millennials who say, "Acha, how do they know anything about what's happening in the country right now?" But that's the same game that the millennials are playing them, right? Because they'd say that, "Oh, he won't understand anything about, let's say, the woke culture or this, that, whatever. So what's even the point in having a conversation with him?"
Yeah,
And
but
this is,
these conversations give you like perspective of the
huh.
other side so much, because I have actually like, I've gotten into a conversation when the whole farmers issue was happening, and when I was, sort of, I've always been like anti BJP, but when I was, very explicitly calling this out, and when somebody who I was having this conversation with is a man who has been in the era, is my father's age, who's been in the era, who has seen when Congress was in power and what happened, and how, like, BJP, with whatever of course they're doing, might be wrong, but how it's still so much better than what Congress did in terms of what they were doing in Kashmir, or how the
Hmm.
entire Hindu population was killed, and all of these things, right? So it'll always give you another side of the spectrum. It'll,
Right.
engaging into that dialogue will always help you. It'll, of course, take a lot of your time. It'll take a lot of your patience. It'll be an exercise which will be draining and exhausting for you, right? But are you, like, do you want to get into that because you want to learn something new? Is a question that you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a clear distinction to make, and as you're pointing out, that do you want to learn something or win an argument? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, so additionally, something I've been thinking about, and sorry, Amit Parma talked about this a little bit on his podcast, is the fact that with social media, he feels, and I think that this is true to some extent, that if you spend more time on social media, it sort of propagates extremism, and this could be to the right or the left in that sense.
Yeah.
And this simply comes down to the fact that with echo chambers and those sorts of things, so whatever you sort of propagate on your social media is what you'll be fed, and that will then be forming your opinions, and that's really difficult to get out of, because even with people who you'd be listening to as podcasters, at books you'd be reading or books you get recommended will then sort of be channeled in that particular vein of thought.
Yeah.
So my
You,
particular, yeah,
yeah.
go on.
No, you are a product of what you see and what you consume. Like, I'm 100% on that thought with you, because whatever, the bubble that I create around myself, with social media having polarized, if
Mhm.
I may, like literally polarized opinions on from one topic to another. It depends on what I stop at to consume.
Yeah.
And it not just stops at me wanting to consume that, it also stops at the algorithm, then making me see what I chose to see, and then only showing me similar stuff, right? So you are definitely a product of what you want to see and what you consume. And with everything, with the surveillance that's on internet, it's maddening. Like, one can literally lose it out.
Oh yeah, so that's my concern really, when you can't sort of even agree on the facts or agree on the same, let's say, like you sort of have two different ways of looking at history as well, or two different ways of coming at it into the argument. That's where I sort of, I don't know if the right word is, if the right word is problematic, but then I don't know if conversation can be had because you're so fundamentally different in that sense. Like something I think a lot about with the postmodernists, I don't know if you are well versed with the postmodern philosophers. Like I don't have any respect for them in that matter. And the reason is, obviously I understand, let's say, vessel imperialism and those sorts of things, but the critique that they sort of put out is the fact that even engaging in an honest conversation, in an honest dialogue in that sense, is buying into the white man theory of practicing science in that sense. So that's when I sort of draw the distinction as to, acha, but then how are we going to sort of make progress in society? Because I feel that if you aren't able to talk to someone, if you aren't able to have a conversation with another person, like the only way people have sort of then made progress is through war, or is through other sorts of revolts or those sorts of things. So yeah, it's really tricky, like where the whole landscape is on social media right now.
It is. And when people think about the only easiest way of sort of, or either maybe when they succumb into it, is when they is the whole cancel culture, for that matter.
Yeah.
Right? Because either you can initiate a dialogue, you can get into a discussion, you can give the person, you know constructive criticism, or you can sort of uh, you know explicitly call them out. Which I say, when you're calling somebody out for a reasonable amount of thing where you think it's problematic, it's fine. If you've decided to put your work on out on a public platform, you should be called out on a public platform as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I lost my chain of thought.
No, but
It's
that's
a
but
very
that's
intense discussion.
no, but that's so important though, because like, yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I was talking about the cancel culture. Yes, yes.
huh.
So yeah, if you've decided to put your work out on a public platform, you should be called out on a public platform. Having said that, a lot of people do not understand, or I think where they lack is the fact that people sort of become sly and they either delete their post or delete the
Hmm.
comment, and they, they think that's the right way of mending things, right?
Yeah.
They'll absolutely play it very ambiguously. And the biggest of the biggest people, like, social media influencers, they will either rechange the caption, or they will do something where, people have called them out, but it takes balls of steel to bloody come out and to, acknowledge and accept the fact that, hey, I fucked up, I could have done better here, I'm still learning, and give me another chance, or possibly equipping themselves with enough resources that, this is what I'm doing to sort of correct myself, and this is what I'm doing to be a better ally in this case, right, and not be like a douchebag.
Yeah. No,
So
see, you're
that's
go
actually
on.
called
Yeah.
dirty delete, wherein you slyly delete something, and you think that that's the way things are going to be corrected, and that really is a big problem in itself with the whole social media culture, because I don't know if it's panic for the receiving end I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Like, if I've been called out for anything that, I've done, um one approach is I can very quietly go delete that shit and pretend like nothing ever happened. Second is I let it be there. I even change the post or the caption saying that this post is problematic, and here's why you should not like amplify it ahead, but this is why I'm correcting it right now. And
Hmm.
I acknowledge that I fucked up and I could have done better. Maybe I was, and this can happen now, or this can happen because a lot of people's old tweets, old things that
Oh
they've
yeah.
said which are problematic are being pulled out. So
Yeah.
even things that, you were young and you were wild and you didn't know what you were doing, and you were less informed. But today, if something has been called out of the past, you can and you must own up to the shit that you've done.
Right.
And there's always, a way of handling things rather than leaving it to ambiguity and pretending that nothing ever happened. It's very easy for me to go back to my 2013 Facebook post, or post, and just delete it,
uh,
and nothing, and pretend like nothing even happened.
See, I think there are a few things here. Like I feel that with social media, obviously one should come out and obviously correct themselves if they've made a mistake, let's say a factual error or something of that sort. But then again, I also feel that people who do become really big on social media shouldn't read comments as well, because I feel, and the reason I say this is because the manner, and obviously I'm not as big as obviously those sort of influencers, but I feel that when you have that sort of a fan following, if you are a YouTuber, if you are an Instagrammer, like I think about the times I've gone onto a YouTube video and actually commented. So like not to bring up Joe
Do you
Rogan
or
again.
do you not?
I don't think
No,
I do. Like, do you?
no, I don't.
Yeah. So
It's like,
exactly.
like the rarest of times when I've done it in terms of supporting a friend, or,
Exactly.
probably
Exactly.
helping out. But yeah, I do take a lot of guilty pleasure in those comments.
So see, that's what Joe Rogan talks about. He says that, not to bring him up again, but whatever. Like he
Yeah.
says that if there's a classroom of 25 kids, you'd know, like there'd be one kid who has this radical thought and he always has it. And he says that that's the way to look at YouTube comments. Because imagine, for example, if out of 10 people, 9 people don't write YouTube comments, but that'd be that one person who would. And but those are the comments that you're seeing then. So in his estimation, and I don't know how much true it is, that it's not really representative of your, let's say, audience in that sense. And even if you really want a good critique of your work, there would be fans, there would be relatives, there would be people who are close to you, would then be coming at you and saying that,
But
acha, this.
isn't that a very small sample size to take
Right.
off, right? I mean, if you are putting your work, which is for consumption of masses and which is to be sort of, like I said, if your work is public, your critique should also be public, right? So I don't really like completely agree with what he said. I think it just makes a very, and like, how many times will I go to that same set of friends and relatives, right,
Yeah.
to show them that this is what I do, and they might have their own biases. For the longest time, I never told my dad that I'm promoting a sex toy product on my podcast. Like, he would freak out, he would shit his pants, like, you know. So it's sometimes the kind of content also that you speak about
uh,
might not be, they might not be well versed with it, or it might not be their, you know um like we might not just be on the same tangent, right?
no, I totally agree with that. But and yeah, so this is something I think about. I don't know how true it is, but the fact that um
I think it should be open to all. What I think you can do is not really put a blind eye to comments, because a lot of people might just give you constructive feedback, but
oh yeah,
having
for sure.
validation is a vice, right? We all we all seek validation from the
Hmm,
internet.
exactly. Yeah.
A lot of people in that validation cycle might also be assholes and might just tell you that whatever you're doing is shit, and you should just totally get off there. I think it's what you choose to see and what you choose to ignore, just like how there are good things and bad things around us in real life, not on social media. But what you choose to give, is that worthy of your time enough, is a question that you have to answer. But having a very polarizing thought that nobody should comment, or
No, so so how I put it is I have all my comments out there, but I just rarely look at them. Is because as you touched about it, right? So even if however much restraint we may have, you may get like 50 comments saying that your work is great, this, that, whatever. But you'll get that one comment saying that, Acha Garima, your podcast is absolutely shit, this, that, and you should not be doing this. But that comment would stick to you much longer than the 50 love comments
it's
saying that
human
you're great.
nature, right?
And
It's
that's human nature, right?
Yeah, it's human nature. And again, like even in real life, you will not everybody is your friend, right? You know where to draw a line when you meet
Yeah.
people, and you bucket them into these are acquaintances and these are friends and these are best friends and these are like soulmates. Sorry for the word. But I'm just saying, like you bucket and you have a bracket there with people, and you draw a line. So same, I mean, if you imply the same behavior on social media, where you know what to filter and what to look at, of course, no denial. The amount of toll it can take you. One very simple, comment which tells you that whatever you're doing is absolute trash, is such a put off for you, and you will get
Hmm.
bugged and like demotivated. But that's the nature of it. You can't help it.
Exactly.
If you've signed up for it, you
Huh.
better be ready for it.
Yeah. So we were talking a lot about this aspect of creating change in society. So something I'm interested in knowing, like who were your intellectual influences on your life? Like they could be, let's say, feminists that we were talking about, or anyone really that have sort of made you look at the world in a sort of different way, and yeah,
So I'll
contribute
give
the
you
work you do.
international names, and I'll give you national names, and then I'll give you like people who have made it, people who have sort of made me realize the change that's required around my space, right? So of course, like big feminist icons like Oprah Winfrey, like Gloria Steinem, and reading their literary texts have been, life changing, in the sense that I knew where the ideology today that is there, where it comes from, right? So for me to have a clear overview of why a movement started, what was the need of a movement, like a whole feminist movement. So for me to know the history behind it is very, very important. So I think, like, all due credit there. A lot of feminist songs that I've heard, they've also been like, not kidding, they've been such a trigger in my life. Those lyrics that you listen to, they've been such a trigger. Coming to the Indian landscape, when I look at works of, um, for lack of better word, when I look at these influencers on social media, like a Lisa Mangaldas, who talks about prioritizing female pleasure, or who talks about how it's so patriarchal even in our textbooks that clitoris never gets mentioned as a female organ, and penis is always so glorified, and how important it is for a reproductive system, right?
Mhm.
uh, Simple as things that we talk about in our textbooks and the way our books are written, like the female reproductive system would just be a fleeting thing, and no amount of enough, um, you know description, or it's just in a very fleeting manner. Like there's no hint of it um, in our textbooks, right? So that bit, other couple of people who have sparked change. Um, wow, I just can't think of Aranya Johar is
Yeah.
one such person, for the age she is, I think she has commendable, like she's a treasure of knowledge, and I've like hosted her on my podcast, and the conversation went up to like 1.5 hours, and it was incredible. The school of thought this girl has is incredible. So that was such a big eye opener for me, because we're like 5 6 years apart in terms of the age difference that we have. But oh my god, like there's so much to learn from her. And again, people who have seen in my life, my mother being the biggest of them, and not saying it as cliche, but being a daughter to three girls, and letting them do whatever the fuck they want to do in their lives. Like I have my youngest sister is like 6 7 years younger to me, and I freak out when she will go out wearing like certain clothes in Delhi, and my mother would be so chill about it. So sometimes I look back and reflect, and I'm like, dude, if I had a daughter, like you just go to that primitive school of thought where you will be like, I will monitor how she dresses, right?
Mhm.
And I'm saying, I still need to check myself there. But this whole fear that's mongered, that you know you you're I mean, I don't know how to put it out, but the fact that she is, so radical and super chill, of course, but at the same time is opinionated when it comes to having all three of us live a certain life the way we've lived, and never putting a boundary, and legit, like never putting a boundary on anything for us, so I learned from her a lot, that even though I'm, from the millennial generation, so to say, but she's still more woke than me.
Yeah.
Like real woke, like badass woke.
No, listen, Garima, like it's
But
already
at
been
least you
go on.
had those sources of learning, right?
Huh.
In her, like from her times, when literally there was nothing that she could, all she learned was through herself. Like there were no
Mm.
sources of inspiration for her, right? She comes from a very very small village in Rajasthan. Not that she was ever, you know, she had that metro exposure where she could sort of be into that hep crowd and learn things. But for her, I think the way she's brought all three of us up, I really respect her for that.
Listen, Garima, it's already been an hour, and I just feel that I haven't even scratched the surface of our conversation yet. I would love to host you sometime again in the future. But just for this time, if there's anything you'd like to plug, your social media handles where people can find you, feel free to.
Yeah. I think as podcasters, one should never miss a chance of blowing their own trumpet, because that's the least that we can do for ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Because we're not on any visual, platform where it's a finger marathon and you will stumble upon my profile just because you're scrolling.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, if you want to listen to more of, these taboo shattering conversations, if you want to sort of find your own identity, because I think there's a constant existential crisis that all of us are facing. If you want to get a resource on how you can be, a better ally, how you can be, a person with more open-minded thoughts, I would say, then definitely check out the podcast. It's called Popcast with Garima. It's present on all streaming platforms. And yes, that's
No,
it.
thanks for coming on. Thanks. This has been great.
Thank you, Ishan, for having me. And I think it was such a engaging conversation, because most podcasts that I've been part of, like where I am the interviewee, yeah, where
Yeah.
I'm the interviewee. uh, I think, a lot of thing that other people do is just ask questions and never really contribute to a
Oh
discussion,
yeah, yeah.
and that's not a turn off for me, because it's like giving an exam. There's a question and I have to give an answer, and probably the person sitting on the other side is judging me for my answer.
Uh,
Having a heart to heart and having a conversation where there's, equal amount of thoughts exchanged, and where we agree, we disagree,
mhm.
and we don't, and we use and milk out the best of a platform like podcast, where we said it, the free speech, and the banter can keep on going on. But thank you, Ishan, for having me. I think it was a wonderful conversation.
No, thank you once again. Bye, guys.